Well, good evening, friends, lovers, and thank you for joining us. This is 5 Minutes with Robert and Amy Nasir, and we are not alone. I want to welcome Dr. Meghann Ribbens to the show. Meghann, how are you doing on this fine evening?
I'm doing well now that I'm here with you guys, so thank you.
Well, thank
Well,
you.
How are you
that,
guys doing?
we are good. We could not be better. Having you on the show, we're looking forward to this all week. I just want to make sure
Oh,
I've got a couple of folks on the chat here. Make sure I got my chat box up. Yes, there will be questions. Who knows what will come up. Now, I would usually do a long intro to the show, and I'm going to do a bit of that. Because on this date, well, I'm going to leave off the on this date, but, and I always tell people where we are at in the year. Today is day 243 of 2025. 243 days into your best year yet. And that means there's only 116 days until Christmas.
All right.
116 days. That puts Halloween at
Uh,
61
That's
days.
tomorrow.
For Amy, we're well into the Halloween season. And there are 21 days, exactly 3 weeks, until the fall equinox,
Yes.
when the day is as long as the night. And it's interesting because the day sunrise and the sunset actually shift together. So depending on whether you want to call that the 21st or the 22nd, which one you prioritize. And I want to know from Dr. Meghann Ribbens. Meghann, if you had to pick one, are you a Christmas person or a Halloween person? Or are you a autumnal equinox person?
Or are you an Easter person or a Bunny Day person?
Well, we don't have dates for those. But no, the real question is Christmas, Halloween, or the equinox?
probably Halloween. I mean, cosplay and free candy. Who can say no to that?
That's
Okay.
right.
Well, then you're definitely in Amy's corner in regard to that.
You're Team Amy, not Team Robert now.
And
So what is Team Robert Christmas?
Yes.
yes, I'm not a Halloween person, and that wouldn't mean much. I mean, I give out Halloween candy every Halloween, but Amy totally is a Halloween person, and so yeah, we have a little bit of
Yes.
fun with
Yes.
that rift, that difference
Yeah.
there.
Well, we'll get to the flying spaghetti monster in a minute.
We
but-
will absolutely get to the flying spaghetti monster. But Dr. Meghann Ribbens, you are teaching. Now I know you work in the sciences, and I'd love to hear some of, maybe one or two of the stories about the state of scientific epistemology, the way things are done, biology in business. But I know you have questions because of the way business is doing science with the way education is doing science. And you have started your own series, the Inductive History of Biology. So I'd love to start with that. What made you think, see, this is what we talked a little bit before the show about the Ayn Rand Center UK. And do you remember Clubhouse?
I do.
We did some Clubhouse sessions on there, and I know you did too, and you were teaching us physics by phone.
Mhm.
I thought, were you going to do an audio education course on physics? But we had great fun with that. I know you only did a few of them, but listening in on those. So is this an extension of that? It's amazing to me that somebody is coming along saying, "Nah, what they're doing isn't good enough," and you're going to do
Well,
it better.
yeah. I mean, it's funny because um, part of my inspiration was Lisa Van Dam, who as is one of the greatest educators I've ever encountered. And that's, I mean, Mark Collins, Maria Montessori, like that's quite a pantheon in my mind. Um, and I've followed a lot of her work about teaching hierarchically, and I mentioned on my channel, she's talked a couple of times about particularly her education in science, you know what I mean, where physics started with the picture of an atom
Mhm.
before any idea of what an atom was, or how we figured out what it was, why it was so crucial that we figure it out, like what was the pressing issue that made that that level of investigation necessary. And long before she mentioned all of those things, I was like, wait, is that wrong? And it like, yeah,
Because you
biology,
only
like,
had the experience you did, so I guess it
right,
would be a
exactly. It
question.
never occurred to me that there was anything else possible, right?
Yeah,
Um, it's like we all grow up, or most of us grow up with altruism, and so we conflate that with morality because that's all we know of
there was
morality.
an alternative.
There,
Yeah.
Yes.
yeah, exactly. Um, and so, yeah, she was one of the people who kind of got me thinking, hmm, maybe there is another way to do it. Is the way I was taught really the best way? And I could immediately answer no. Um, but that didn't give me a lot to go on in terms of, okay, but what would be better? So I had to do a lot of hustling. And one of the other things that really helped me was, Keith Logich of the Ayn Rand Institute,
Mhm.
um, gave a course on, you know, gravitation and motion, just, like an intro to physics course, but walking through the history of like what was the burning question of the day. It was so much more important that they set aside the burning, the pressing issue of survival to investigate this particular question and, kind of following from there. And I forget who it was who was doing the kind of um, uh, sort of an echo of that. Maybe echo is not the right word, but through Clubhouse. But I really enjoyed that. And
Mhm.
the only thing I would have added to it is building more stuff. So so Keith made at one point he made the oh, I'm forgetting who it was. It wasn't like Herodotus or something, but one of the early Greek astronomers had this model of the solar system with the Earth at the center, and then there was like the orbit of the sun, and then around that the zodiac, right? Because the zodiac is kind of at this angle and the sun's at this angle. You know what I mean? And I just love that. I was like, I want to do. So I made one myself, and I sort of used a soldering iron and destroyed some Lego to to kind of fit that together. Um, and you know, as this is all going on, my daughter is growing, and we started doing experiments together when she was 4. And it, even when I fell flat on my face, it was really fun. So we just kept doing them. Most of them I haven't even put on YouTube, but I realized, even you know what I mean? Like, even if she never becomes a scientist,
Well,
she's gonna be able to.
sounds like you're giving her
Sorry?
the edge. It sounds like you're giving her the background that you wish you had had. And
Yeah,
that's a
yeah, really.
beautiful thing. Incidentally, I usually at the beginning of the show we'll do people's birthdays, who was born on this date. And I left all that out today, but I've got to say it is Maria Montessori's birthday.
Oh,
Born
yeah.
in
I didn't know that.
August 31st, where did my S's go? August 31st, 1870. Folks, if you're not familiar with Maria Montessori, look into it. There are all sorts of resources out there. There's even objectivists talking about her. If you're into that, you can find out more. She's a real hero
Yeah.
of education.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah,
happy birthday to the late Maria Montessori.
yeah, and just, you know what I mean? Like, the more I learn about Maria Montessori, the more I admire her. She was I mean, you guys probably know, she was the first woman in Italy to get an MD, so the first female physician. Um, but like the thing I admire about her most was that she started with observation, right? That there's
Mhm.
this great story of her, where she's with these disadvantaged kids, and they're finishing their meal, and there are breadcrumbs, and the kids are immediately going for the breadcrumbs. Now, most people just assume that the kids are still hungry or greedy or whatever. She didn't start with assumptions. She started with observation. She just watched, and the kids didn't eat the breadcrumbs. They started manipulating them.
Mhm.
And she realized that it wasn't about, nourishing their bodies at this point. It was about nourishing their need to manipulate, to have manual stimulation, to nourish their minds.
Mhm.
And it's astonishingly rare in the history of both education and science that you have people start with observation. And that's when the doors of human knowledge fly open. Um,
Yes.
so yeah.
Yeah, I love how you use the terms looky eyes and thinky brain. I love it. It's wonderful. Yes, it's wonderful. And yeah, use your looky eyes, use your thinky brain.
Yeah, and that
Yeah.
anecdote about children seeking to manipulate objects in a way that makes sense. Well,
Yeah.
that's they're seeking to gain mastery over reality
Yeah.
and their own curiosity.
And they're fine-tuning their senses. They can't exist in a bubble. They need to interact with things. They need to get dirty. They need to be tactile. For
So
sure.
so when you've worked in science, have you seen that same mastery over reality and the reality first attitude?
I mean, yes and no, and it's a little I apologize if I stumble a little bit because it's a little hard to explain. I mean, on the one hand, you have these marvels of technology and knowledge, right? So I was working with an instrument called a mass spectrometer, and what it does is it shines a laser onto just pretty much a regular glass microscope slide. And when you drop like a little droplet of liquid with, say, viruses on it, the laser, like when the viruses interact with the surface, the laser light will scatter. And so essentially these viruses are casting a shadow. And
Mm.
the deeper the contrast, the deeper the shadow, the bigger the molecule. And there's sort of a linear correlation between the contrast and the size of the molecule. So you can measure the mass of something as tiny as a virus or an antibody, which is ridiculously tiny, right? You
Yeah.
can fit trillions of viruses in a tiny droplet. But when you're using this instrument, you can actually watch these viruses drop onto the slide. I mean, that to me is magic. It's
Yeah.
amazing. And like, I was listening to the person who invented this, and I was like, this is why I love human beings, is that they make stuff like this. On the other hand, I saw so much that just I don't know how to describe the feeling exactly. It was tragic, I guess. Um, so for example, I survived graduate school. And that's the best anyone can say, right?
Yeah, you share. I know you shared a story about how in school there was a real disconnect between science and application, and that it seemed like you were finding remnants of that attitude even once you got out of education into actual industry, into business.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say this is universal. This is my anecdote. So, I don't want to universally condemn anyone. I did notice, in academia, a lot of professors seem to think that if your observations could in any way better the human condition, it was somehow less sciencey.
Mm.
And it got to the point where the observations probably could never help you with it. So for example, my dissertation was on microbial fuel cells. There are these bacteria. There are actually several species that can breathe rock the way we breathe oxygen. So if you feed them something like wastewater, they eat it. Fortunately, we don't, but they think it's delicious. They break it down into electrons and protons the way we break down our food. And at the end of the day, they need to get rid of those, right? They use it to power life the way we do. And we need to get rid of them so we breathe. And they breathe onto an electrode, like a graphite electrode. So you feed them wastewater and they come out with clean water and a little bit of electricity. That to me is incredible. Now the question is, this is kind of a value-added product. How can you get more value out of it? Cleaner water and more electricity. Um, but a lot of what research was being done in the field it wasn't even an attempt to make more electricity,
Mm.
really. It just didn't, it was like, I think if we want to learn how to do that, we should try to make more. That was in some places a kind of an unpopular attitude. To this day, I'm a little bewildered by that. Um, So, so yeah, in I've seen in some places just this, I would say, observation without any real inclination towards correlation, let alone hypothesis
Right.
and
Yeah.
kind of
And if
So,
looking for
yeah,
causal relationships.
it sounds like there's two things that they're kind of working rationalistically in that way, but also they're not looking to apply uh, the content of what or their discoveries to bettering human life, and
Yeah, I mean,
or
it's
having any
seriously
value context is not there. Yeah.
right, right. If anything, I would say that some of what I saw in academia would in the parlance of philosophy would be empiricist, right? Just looking at concretes without any attempt to abstract,
Right.
the causal connections. Then again, in biotech, which I have since been in for over a decade, a lot of what I saw, and again, not universally, but a lot of what I saw was very rationalistic, right? Like, very Karl Popper, like, we don't need observations. That's not important. We just make up a hypothesis as long as it's testable, it counts as science. Now, if you're just making up something testable, you could spend an entire lifetime or thousands of lifetimes
Right.
making stuff up and testing them, and you're
Hmm.
probably not going to get very far. And I won't say it was quite that bad
Okay. Good.
in industry, but there was a lot of that.
Yeah.
A lot of like, okay, we know how this works, so we're just going to tweak it the way we think it works.
Right.
Well, it didn't work. Try again.
and there's so much opportunity out there that's not being taken advantage of. A few years ago, I worked at Waste Management Corporation, and I was usually in their offices, but I also worked with the landfills and other properties. And they had a landfill, and it was one of the big ones. You would look at it and think there's a mountain. And if you know landfills, they produce an enormous amount of methane and other gases. And the smaller landfills would burn it off. So if you ever go by a mountain where you
They
see
would flare it the
fires,
way that
they would have flares.
yeah,
Yeah.
the way like fracking wells would too, because it's at that point it's not worth capturing, it's just a nuisance.
And this particular landfill, instead, they installed a bioengineered plant where they would run the gases through a tank of bacteria, which would absorb the methane. They would eat the methane, and relatively safe gases come out the other end, and liquids come out. And you think, like, yeah, living organisms living on that. Well, that's just part of what's happening there. So when you say there are microorganisms eating rocks, some folks might say, well, that can't be. No, actually, it's amazing what's possible out there.
Yeah.
And hopefully more and more of those kinds of technologies will be put into use.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because I was at one point I was working with a company that was looking to accelerate the settling of landfills by increasing the production of methane, right? That's sort of the last step in the breakdown process of garbage. And you can't like in the past people have tried to just avoid the sort of fermentation that happens in landfills. They couldn't. Um, and so, the other, instead of like trying to avoid it, you can lean into it, right? And you
Yep.
can accelerate the settling, make the landfill last longer. And if you get really good at it, the methane is not just a nuisance, it's worth capturing and compressing into natural gas and maybe
Yeah.
powering
Yeah,
a generator or
they actually
something.
had a hill that was powering 19,000 homes out of just 8 generators. And you look at them, they look like oversized cat engines from a tractor. There's just these big generators in a building. And yeah, so science can do anything. We have an unusual high percentage of engineers in the listening audience and in our Great Lakes Objectivists group as well. So I know they're
Very
appreciating the
cool.
special. In fact, for tonight, I have my Genius Fuel cup here, and
Nice.
it's kind of a bit of a poser because I forget if it was one of your posts or one of your videos, but you mentioned there are people out there who don't even know who Mendeleev was. And I have to admit that I had to look up the father of the periodic table because I didn't know who that was either. And yeah, that's the
Well, and
state
it's
of
not
science.
like it's definitely not meant to like make anyone feel bad. It's just, but it is kind of ridiculous, right? That we are taught to make like so I'm about to do a video just kind of distinguishing um like as opposed to I don't like the term like project based or hands-on science because usually what that look I have looked through dozens of those kinds of books in the library, right? And I'm actually genuinely looking for things to build with my daughter besides like the Archimedes screw and the Leyden jar and the Galileo incline and the her little robot. Um and most of what I find are, um, like marshmallow and toothpick models of molecules, right? And like that, first of all, that's not science, and nobody would be fooled that it was.
Yeah.
But secondly, like that's a bit anachronistic to kind of do that without knowing like how did we ever get to this point? You know what I mean? And why? Why did we ever bother? Um,
Yeah, a lot of
so
it comes across as crafts or make work,
Right.
and
yeah,
connecting
yeah.
it to scientific knowledge seems artificial. Yeah.
Yeah. And speaking of, since is now a good time to do my demo?
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
sure. Sure. And
Okay.
and after that, we do have some questions for you from the audience.
Oh, I'm flattered.
Yes.
So when I say that we do real science, we make real devices, we use them to do real science. I'm gonna put um
Yeah, your microphone
so
just broke up there. You said you're going to do what?
I'm gonna put my money where my mouth is right
Huh?
now.
Okay.
So I'm zooming in through two devices. I don't know if you can see that. And I'm gonna flip my camera. All
Yep. The one you've just added is
right.
real blurry, but it looks like the one is showing your
It's
screen, and that's what we really care about.
yeah, so you can see there's way too many tabs. But what you've got here is my little hook, and I know I always mispronounce his name. It's my little microscope I built myself this morning.
Mhm.
You
And
built
it's
this
got my little
microscope
QR code.
yourself.
I did, and I'm going to teach everyone how to build their own microscope and their own
Hmm.
lenses.
Oh,
But in the meantime, what I'm going to do is flip it over. See if I can. Um, I'm juggling too many devices as usual, but you can now see that there's light coming through the microscope to my webcam lens. I hope I
yeah.
can
Is that a flashlight that you're holding up onto the lens?
no,
Wait, wait.
that's the lens. And now if you can
Okay.
see in my other camera, I've got a little baggie of um moss because
Oh,
that's one of the organisms we're going to look at
yeah.
as part of our so the other one of the other projects that we do that will walk us through observation and correlation starting with Aristotle, going to Harvey and Vesalius, and then to Linnaeus and Lamarck and Darwin. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick it to my microscope, and I'm going to turn off this camera for a second so that you can really take a look. See if I can focus. Um, it takes a little bit of work there. I don't know if you can see, I'm moving the lens. Oh, you know what? I need a light, which I have here.
Hmm.
Gonna make that better. So I've got my microscope on my webcam and my, I don't know if you can see it. It's a little hard to focus, but I just think that's so beautiful. Um, our moss
Hmm.
on the microscope, and I'm just moving the moss. So that's I'm gonna turn off my camera. It's feel a little distracting. But
Uh,
so that's
I'm tempted to ask you, how do you build a microscope? Although I wouldn't want you to, spoil it for the folks who.
oh no, I could probably do it right now. I think I've got my lighter here somewhere. I'm so glad you asked, although like you may get more than you could bargain for. But the thing is that the early microscopes use the two lens trick. So they would use a combination of either two convex lenses that bulge out,
Mhm.
or a convex and a concave lens. So a lens that bulges out and a lens that kind of caves in.
Yeah.
Um, make small things look bigger. And we actually build lenses too, so you can play with that yourself. But Anton
And
von Leeuwenhoek, and again, I always mispronounce his name, I apologize. He did something a little different. He used the tiny lens trick. So what you can do is create a very tiny sphere of glass. And because it's really small, there's a lot of curvature. And that really magnifies an image. And I show on my channel that you can actually see things as tiny as microbes
Could you
with
tell me?
your very own.
Yeah.
and this is already posted on, because I haven't watched all 42 videos yet. This is posted
We've only watched
on
some.
Inductive
I'll
History of
allow it.
Biology.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we got a lot more coming too. Like there's always new experiments and new stuff we're building. So yeah.
So I think it cut out. Tell me again who created the tiny lens.
Anton von Leeuwenhoek, even though I totally
Okay.
mispronounced his name.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what is the name of your podcast again?
Inductive
So I've
History
got
of
an-
Biology.
Yeah. If you look me up on
Yeah.
YouTube, it's MA Ribbens with an E before the N. But
Yeah.
yeah, the playlist is called Inductive History of Biology.
Yes.
It sounds really boring. It is anything but.
Inductive History of Biology.
Yes.
I just want to make sure that came through.
Yeah, and they are linked to in the YouTube description as well as the Facebook Live description. And the Patreon, of course, is listed as well. Patreon.com/Dr. Mommy. That's Dr. Mommy, no dot there. If folks, you're like, oh, I want to spend money on this right away, even before seeing the product, and you should. And you've got a couple contributor levels on there. There's a basic $5 a month level, but apparently for $50, you can actually spend an hour. Yes, each month that you pay. So you could spend an hour talking to Dr. Ribbens. You could put your student in front of the webcam and ask those questions. Oh, wait, in this particular video, you did this thing and I wasn't too sure about that. So that's a neat offer that you're.
Yeah, I mean, it could be, I've done tutoring since graduate school, right? So really it could be any question you have. Like I am in no way qualified or interested in giving you medical advice. But for example, I had a friend with a rare genetic disease. And so we talked about kind of what the state of the industry is in terms of gene therapy versus monoclonal antibody therapy, you know what I mean? And just generally a genetic disorder. So yeah, it's obviously I love to talk shop. So anyone who wants to talk shop, I'm very happy to do so.
Yeah.
And at a very discounted price. I used to charge 3 figures an hour for tutoring.
Wow. Well, that's a bargain.
And now, folks, you can get, if you know where to go, you can get it for $50 an hour once a month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also we, like that includes like the materials you need to make lenses and to, like specially curated herbaria, like books of living plants to help you understand evolution, and correlation and observation. And, the stuff to build your own microscope. And I can show you right now if you want. I'm getting a lighter and.
Well, while you're getting that, our friend Paul in the chat, he says that in the old Amateur Scientist by Scientific American, they show how to make tiny lenses using a bead of glass. So
yeah, you can do that. I got this idea from John Krieger, who wrote one of the books I narrate as part of the class, called The Discovery of Germs. And he said, you can demonstrate microscopy with a clear marble, and it will magnify, whatever you're looking at, several times. You can also buy clear glass spheres. Like I used to use them to kind of spread liquid over agar plates, so you can get smaller ones, or you can make your own. I've got a lighter here. You probably want something with a blue flame. I've tried it with just a regular candle flame. It doesn't work super great. I don't know if you can see, I've got this glass capillary. That's the easiest thing to get.
Yeah, so glass capillary.
And yeah, sorry, the hardest part is keeping in my Bluetooth, which is not great. All right, so I got my glass capillary, got my lighter.
Aha.
You can see the flame here. And then you just heat the end, and it will just form a glass ball. And as it forms a glass ball, I just slowly bring up the lighter. And as you can see, it's really pretty actually. And as long as it's fairly spherical and not tear-shaped, it'll keep getting like a bigger and bigger sphere. Although the bigger it gets, the less magnification you're gonna get.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if you can see this,
Yeah,
but that's my
barely.
little sphere on the end of there. Yeah, and then, obviously you want to block out all the other light that's coming to your eye because of it, then it gets hard to focus through the sphere.
I got to say
Which
two
is why
things. Two things I've got to say. One is that Paul in the chat seems to be enjoying this. He says, I never did this. Now I get to see. The other thing I've got to say is, folks, if you're going to try this at home, make sure you have your shop glasses on. Because occasionally, if you are working with glass, it will decide to crack and bits of it will jump. So
Yeah.
And I know Dr. Megan's done this so many times. You think, well, what are the odds? And you're right. I'm sure it's plenty safe. But, just for anybody trying this at home, I'd hate to be responsible for any surprises like that.
Well, let me ask you this. This is a very weird question, but so when we go swimming, we don't have our glasses on, and we're in the pool, and then they usually have like a clock up on the wall, way far up away, and I'm trying to figure out while swimming what time it is.
Yeah, it's the strangest thing because I can put my fingers like this, and if there's only a pinhole, like a pinhole camera, it focuses. That seems really strange to me that even works.
I've never tried that.
Oh, it absolutely. Are you? If maybe you're not nearsighted, but I am, and
yes,
it's always been a wonder to me that pinhole trick actually works.
I guess if you have to be nearsighted for it to work. Yes, and anyway, there you are.
I don't know if there was a question in there, but
yeah, no. So like I one of the other things you do is make actual lenses, and so you've got concave and then plano, or convex and plano. You know what I mean? Like all different combinations.
Yeah.
And you can fill the inside with water. And I after I started making these, a friend of mine told me about this, I think, project in Africa somewhere where like people everywhere, there are people with who are either nearsighted or farsighted, and glasses can be expensive and difficult to come by. They actually fill these lenses with some sort of clear gel, enough to give it a different refractive index. So essentially, they use the lenses I've been making or something similar, and filling them with something to essentially give them cheap handmade glasses. So there's real practical value in just playing around with this stuff.
Yeah,
I mean, it's fun. Obviously, I enjoy it.
Yeah, Paul says in the chat, you are increasing the depth of field of your eye's lens by stopping it down.
I've heard things like that, but to be honest, optics confuses me. Whether it's pure optics or camera engineering, I don't get it. And we probably won't solve that now. I don't know if you get into optics at all in the course, but
a little bit.
It's a wonder to me that things work the way they do.
You know what's a wonder to me, and I know I'm just going to ignore the chat for now, but so what's really wondrous to me is what the percentage of in terms of by weight, how much bacteria we have that's symbiotic in our bodies. That's absolutely crazy to me. And if I look this up, it says that by cell count, we are only about 57% human, while by weight, we are over 99.7% human. And there's 40 trillion bacteria in our body.
But by weight, it's very low. So obviously all
Yeah,
those microbes are
by
extra micro.
yes, by weight it's only 0.3% of our body mass. But
Yeah.
but yeah,
In terms of if you're counting, you know, not chromosomes, but our nuclei versus either the nuclei of our microbes. A lot of the microbes don't have nuclei; they just have like a circular piece of DNA. Yeah, it's actually like what I've read is it's like a 10-to-1 ratio. Like every cell of ours, there's like 10 that do not have human DNA.
right.
So we got a lot of little buddies just
I
helping
guess
us out.
I guess for anybody who hasn't been told that their whole lives, that might be a little alarming.
It'll be creepy.
And it is, except I'm used to it.
Like they're like our little friends, right?
Yes.
They help prevent us from getting diseases, and they
Yeah.
they give us certain vitamins that we can't get another way, or at least not easily. They're
Wow.
looking out for us, and they don't even have eyes, which is really sweet.
Love it.
I'm curious because one of the reasons I'm used to having things in my body that don't belong there or that do belong there but aren't me. I'm told nowadays, and I'm completely changing the subject, but I'm curious if you have any thoughts on this. I'm told that I have a spork in my brain. That all of us have consumed so many microplastics that we have the equivalent of a plastic spoon in our brain. Any thoughts on the microplastics controversy?
I mean, not exactly. So one of the other projects I worked on was with bacteria that make plastic. So on the molecular level, and I'm sorry, I can't demonstrate this right
Bacteria
now.
that make plastic.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So on the molecular level, fats, and I'm sorry, like I said, I wish I could demonstrate this. So just put this as a promissory note. Fats a lot of carbons and hydrogens. Plastic is a lot of carbons and hydrogens. In a lot of ways, they do the same job, right? They store a lot of carbon and hydrogen, which when you respire them, ends up being a lot of electrons and protons, like a lot of energy, which is why we store fat, right? You're storing electrical energy into chemical energy. And you can do that with plastic too, which is why plastic gives you a lot of energy, for instance, when you burn it. So there are bacteria that will store excess carbon as plastic the way we store it as fat. And yeah, so that was one of the things I worked on was with bacteria that made plastic. So the idea that, yeah, so like, you know what I mean? There's a sense in which at least certain plastics are natural and not really scary. They do a pretty valuable job in terms of being not very permeable to stuff like a lot of plastics are not very permeable to water. So they're very good at preserving food for longer. That's really valuable. I was talking to my daughter today about how, we did before we had plastics, we had a lot of filth and it was really hard to keep things clean. So, in terms is there like a sporks amount of plastic, like microplastics in your brain? I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, I've never looked inside someone's brain. I hope I never have to.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
But it also doesn't trouble me all that much either.
Yeah.
They're really chemically inert and not, not that weird.
Yeah, yeah, we know some folks who are very concerned about not drinking water from bottled waters, like bottles of water, that they might get some plastics in the brain or something. We're pro bottled water around here, but yeah.
It does seem to be an issue this year for folks who worry about those things.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, if there's anything there to be concerned about, I would certainly like to know it. But you say you're not to because plastics tend to be biochemically inert?
Right.
Good.
I mean, they have different plastics have slightly different properties, which is actually really cool. But they're not too different from what a lot of bacteria make.
Then I feel comfortable to continue making light of the matter. So
Good.
we're well into things, and I know, Amy, you've got a lot of questions from folks.
Yeah.
Just a real quick starter question, something I wanted to ask about. Did you, when you started developing the course, Inductive History of Biology, do you have a target audience in mind, or is this just for anybody who's curious?
It's a good question. I mean, my primary target audience is my alpha tester, my daughter Gracie, who is 9. Um, and I would, I obviously I'm looking to scale, and I would like more elementary, middle, junior high, high school, um, young people, to help them get good at being observant and being good problem solvers. Um, I want them to flourish, just like I want my daughter to flourish. But I also really want, for instance, adults who um, remember nothing from their science class except boredom, right? I want them to maybe get to know some of these heroes of mine, and hopefully they'll become heroes of other folks as well. And I realized, in talking with some of Gracie's teachers and her friends, parents, that I had a hard time kind of explaining what seems so clear to me, that the inductive approach, that, going hierarchically, discovering things the way they were discovered or could have been discovered, um, was so much more, it stuck so much clearer in my mind and in Gracie's mind, and was so much more leverageable in terms of what you could do with that knowledge. It wasn't just like something cool you could say at a cocktail party. It was actually something you could use.
Yes.
Um, and yet I've had a really hard time convincing adults and families that this is so much better
Yeah.
than the sort of canonical way. I'm still struggling with that. So if you guys have any insight as to why that's so hard, like why is it so obvious to me and so kind of meh to a lot of others, I
Mm.
I'm genuinely flummoxed.
Yeah, I'd be interested to know if anybody in the chat has any suggestions, because
Well,
I absolutely know that feeling. Um, some of our engineer friends, we've talked about that. When you have a certain knowledge and it's clear to you that walking around and seeing engineering and seeing math, seeing calculus and the hanging of wires between telephones, just seeing all of these things, kind of the way some people appreciate nature. And then you think some people don't, it's not that they don't know, they don't even see it. They don't even see that they are surrounded by engineering, they're surrounded by math, they're surrounded by biology. How you make it real to other people that you will feel more connected to everything around you. You will have a sense of mastery over what you see because you're in the club. You know what's going on around you, and it's not a mystery. Yeah, that's a real challenge. How would you convince people that, spend a little time with this?
Yeah.
yeah, I don't blame
Yeah.
people for not demanding a fundamentally different approach to education, because again, it was a long time before it even occurred to me that there might be one. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So, you know, and but I realized that there was a separate hurdle demonstrating that there is one and that it is way better.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm still struggling with that second part.
Well,
Yeah, we actually have a question in the chat that might relate to this. I'm not sure. But Apollo asks, are you familiar with the Feynman technique, if I'm saying that correctly? It's
Richard Feynman?
Richard Feynman's Mental Models by Peter Hollins. That's a book that he just got. And I'll just sum up. I looked it up just now. The Feynman technique is a method basically to master a subject by understanding it deeply. And you choose a concept to study, teach it to an imaginary child using simple language and analogies. identify the gaps where you struggled during the explanation, and review and simplify those gaps by returning to your source material and refining your explanation. So basically, it's basically teaching. I mean, you are doing that with your daughter. You know?
Well, I mean, in part,
Yeah,
I actually didn't know that that there was a
technique.
term for it. It's
Yeah.
just something that I've been doing for at least since
Yeah, that
graduate
sounds
school.
like a logical way of teaching
Yeah, preparing a
inductively.
course, you both
Right.
reinforce what you know and you find out what you don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Although again, what I do in my course is a little different because you're building stuff
Hmm.
and you're actually contributing to the body of knowledge, not just your body of knowledge, but
Mhm.
like novel observations. So yeah, like we build a model of different kinds of circulatory systems, right? Like the circulatory system of a worm is different from a fish, is different from a human,
Mhm.
and yet there are certain sort of similarities that you can show with a marble and a couple of syringes. And the marble is actually like people kind of are like, well, whatever. But the marble is actually really important because, for us, we have these separating our atria and our ventricles are these valves, and they're beautiful. They look like leaves. So that when blood is flowing, is being pushed, right? The leaves open up, right? And then when the heart expands again, right? The leaves kind of fold on each other and seal up like a check valve,
Mhm.
to make sure that the blood's not going in the wrong direction. And yeah, so you put a marble in the syringe and it's a check valve. It does the same job. Um,
I love
I
how
think
you
it's fun.
explain that as being beautiful. I just love it. That's
Thank
great.
you. I think it is. It's interesting because I got the idea from this project where you're making a water pump out of a windmill.
Mhm.
And it's fascinating to me that there's essentially like the technology and the I mean, I don't think the technology evolved in any way with much knowledge of the heart, but I actually don't know. And yet they mirror each other so beautifully.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. I mean, but it just shows how much you love the subject that you study and you teach, and that you have such a you value it so very much, and I really appreciate you valuing what you value. It's really good
Yeah.
to see.
Yeah, I forget who was it who described the passionate search for passionless truth, but you seem to have it. You've clearly got the passion there.
Yes.
Love that. What else
Thank
we
you.
got
I
in the
don't know what
chat
a
there?
passionless truth means, but yeah, that's the
Well,
passionate part, I guess.
people will
Yeah,
say,
yeah. So
cold hard facts. But who wants cold hard facts? Well, you do if you can be passionate about it.
mm,
Yeah.
I see what you mean.
Yeah. So what else do we
Yes.
have in the chat there? What are folks asking?
Let's see. We've got Race, who says, "What are your thoughts and opinions regarding the future of life extension, related science technology?"
Any thoughts on
Um,
life extension?
I have a lot actually. So, for some graduate programs, including mine, you're actually there are like for us, there were two big sort of tests you have to pass. The first is your written exam where you can show that you can critically read and understand scientific research papers. You know what I mean? So you don't get bamboozled, but you can also leverage them in your own research. The second test is the oral examination. It's terrifying because you know, you have to, and this is pretty typical, I think. You have to write a kind of mock grant paper, like an NIH grant,
Hmm.
um, and on a subject that you're not actually working on in the lab. So I was working with bacteria, as I mentioned. I did mine on nematodes. Cenorhabditis elegans is an organism that's very well characterized. So it you can get a lot of insight when you study it for stuff like longevity, and a lot of researchers do. And that was what my oral examination, what the topic I chose was longevity in Cenorhabditis elegans. Um, I'm not as close to that work now, just because I'm actually more interested in regenerative medicine. You know, I think there's hopefully a future where we can kind of change out our tissues the way we change out parts in our car.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
It's great.
Now, so what I will say about the field is that, you know, like there, particularly in model organisms, there are genes that relate to and how quickly or slowly particular organisms age. It's not so much that we're genetically wired to age exactly. It has more to do with the fact that for most of us, our fecundity, you know, like how many kids we can have, declines over time, right? And evolution has nothing to say about what happens after we're done having kids,
Mm.
right? Which is why the biggest predictor of cancer is age, right?
Mhm.
Like, you know, like you've had your kids and then you have a major disease right after that. You've already had your kids, right? You've already passed on your genes. So if, you know, if the disease is part of your genetic makeup, you know what I mean? Like it didn't
Mhm.
stop you from having kids, so it has evolution has nothing to say about it. Um, and those diseases include cancer.
Yeah.
So yeah, again, I would say that it's not so much that we're programmed to age as it is that we're, you know, as our fecundity declines, evolution doesn't help us as much, and at some point, it's really got nothing to say about our status of health.
Yeah.
Um, it, I will say that I have personally known um, some quote unquote longevity researchers, and some of them are legitimate and honest, and
Mhm.
some of them are not.
Okay.
Some of them are idiots. Um, so if it sounds too good to be true, it is. Um, Now that being said, there's a lot that goes into being a healthy, vigorous person. So
Mhm.
there's a lot of targets we have that if we could support those functions, you know, we could potentially be a lot more vigorous and maybe even live longer, or at least
Now,
have a longer health span.
have you
Um,
ever given that kind of advice? Do you have a top three tips you would give
no,
people?
no.
Oh, okay.
No. No, yeah, Race also mentions cybernetics and, you know, AI and assistive robots and nanotechnology and all that. I don't know if that's something that you're also following or
Or even interested in.
or if that,
Not really, no,
yeah.
I like building robots, but I'm not very good at it. So I just like build them for you know what I mean? Like nobody should use them as a prosthesis, you know, even for like making their coffee. Um, yeah, it's not that it's not interesting. It's just you know, I'm definitely not an expert at, it, so I
Yeah.
really couldn't
Yeah.
tell you. In terms of like the more neurological prosthesis,
Mhm.
it's really like I'm genuinely curious about it just because you know, what's amazing about the brain is that you know, we tend to think of it as only communicating via electricity. That's true, but it also communicates over like this huge alphabet of chemicals and even sometimes physically. So it's not just that it's communicating across one channel, it's communicating across all kinds of channels. So
Mhm.
how you would convert those different communication styles to something like Neuralink, I have no idea.
Right.
Um, Although to be fair, I'm not a neuroscientist. So again, I'm probably speaking out of my wheelhouse.
Yeah. No, I think you raised some important points. I am not a I am not at any level of anything, but that sounds right to me. Yeah, there's more questions. Just as there's more questions in combating cancer and the different types of cancers and different treatments that don't affect some, you know, certain types of cancers and others that do, it's highly complex. And
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
And let me say that's another thing where I think science education has really, really shot itself in the foot, right? And there's a lot of blame to go around in this instance, right? Like people were expecting a cure to cancer decades ago.
Mhm.
Um, and part of that again is what that professor I was telling you about was like, yeah, we put in the word application into our grant applications, so that people have a reason to give us money to pursue our own curiosity, but really we don't care about the human condition at all. I'm paraphrasing a lot,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
um, so yeah, I'm sure those grant applications, people get wind of them and they expect the world,
Hmm.
and what they get instead is taxes. Um,
Yeah, the best single
Not to say that
explanation I've heard for why we haven't cured cancer is that cancer is not just one thing.
true. And that's another part where the science education has really fallen down. There are at least as many cancers as there are cell types, right? If you think about all the different kinds of tissues that you have like mucous membrane tissues, you have sclera tissues on the outside of your eye, you have retinal tissue, you have bone tissue, you have blood vessel tissue, you have you have all kinds of tissues, right? Each of those kinds of tissues have different cell types. You can have at least one different kinds of cancer for each cell type,
Yep.
and probably more. So there isn't cancer. There are hundreds of different kinds of cancer. So it is a very non-trivial thing to cure even one of them, right? Because your body is meant to attack everything that isn't you, right? When your immune system attacks you, you have um, an an immunological disorder like type 1 diabetes or rheumatoid arthritis or lupus, right? It's a really bad thing when your immune system attacks you.
Hmm.
So we don't usually do it. But cancer is you.
Yeah.
So we don't usually attack it.
Hmm.
That's what makes cancer hard. And the fact that there are hundreds of different kinds.
Yes, yes. One more question
And the
from
fact
Rick.
that most
Yeah.
people don't know that is it's a really damning indication of the state of our
Mm,
scientific education.
yeah. I mean, for the last 20 years, all I've heard about in public school systems is, oh, we have to teach STEM. Well, I'm not entirely sure how far that's gotten us.